The torchlight flickered across 20 stern faces as the town council of Jamestown, California, delivered their verdict. And Jessica Barrett knew with cold certainty that her life, as she had known it, was about to end. It was March of 1872, and the gold rush days had faded into memory, leaving behind a town clinging desperately to respectability and rigid moral codes. The council chamber smelled of tobacco smoke and self-righteousness as Mayor Thornton brought his gavel down with a crack that echoed through the room like a gunshot. Jessica stood before them in her plain cotton dress, her dark hair pulled back severely from a face that had grown pale over the past 3 weeks since the accusations began. She was 22 years old, unmarried, and, according to the good people of Jamestown, a threat to the moral fabric of their community. "Miss Barrett," Mayor Thornton intoned, his jowls quivering with importance, "this council has heard testimony regarding your conduct with multiple men of this town. We have heard from witnesses who claim to have seen you entering the Lucky Star Saloon unaccompanied. We have heard accounts of improper behavior and loose morals. While you have denied these charges, the evidence of your character speaks for itself." Jessica wanted to scream that every word was a lie, that she had gone to the saloon exactly once to bring medicine to a sick girl who worked there, that the so-called witnesses were simply Martha Cunningham and her circle of gossips who had decided Jessica was too pretty and too independent for their liking. But she had already tried to explain, and her words had fallen on deaf ears. In a town where reputation meant everything, being accused was the same as being guilty. "Therefore," the mayor continued, "this council votes to banish you from Jamestown. You will leave at dawn tomorrow. If you are found within town limits after sunrise, you will be arrested and imprisoned. Do you understand?" Jessica's throat was too tight to speak, so she simply nodded. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let these men see her cry. She had no family left. Her parents had died 2 years ago from fever, and the small boarding house she ran was all she had in the world. Now, even that would be taken from her. As the council members filed out, already moving on to their next bit of business, Jessica stood frozen in the empty room. Where would she go? She had $37 to her name, no horse, and no prospects. Dawn was only 8 hours away. She walked out into the cool March night, the stars brilliant overhead, mocking her with their indifferent beauty. The main street of Jamestown was quiet, most respectable people already in their beds. Jessica made her way back to her small boarding house, her feet moving automatically while her mind spun in useless circles. She would have to pack what she could carry, leave behind everything she had built. Maybe she could make it to Sonora, find work there, start over with nothing and no one. She was so lost in her desperate thoughts that she nearly collided with the man standing outside her front door. "Miss Barrett," he said, and she recognized Nathan Thorne's deep voice immediately. Nathan Thorne was something of a legend in these parts, though he rarely came into town. He owned a ranch about 10 miles outside Jamestown, a sprawling property he had built from nothing over the past 6 years. Jessica had seen him perhaps a dozen times, usually when he came to town for supplies. He was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that tended to fall across his forehead. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-green, and there was something in his quiet, watchful manner that had always made Jessica's heart beat a little faster, though she had never spoken more than a few polite words to him. Now he stood in the shadows of her porch, his hat in his hands, and even in the darkness she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Mr. Thorne," she managed, her voice shaking, "I cannot invite you in. It would only add to the talk." "I know about the council's decision," he said, ignoring her words. "I was there, in the back." Jessica felt a flush of humiliation. So he had witnessed her public shaming. "Then you know I must be gone by dawn. Please excuse me, I have packing to do." "Marry me," he said. The words hung in the night air between them, so unexpected that Jessica was certain she had misheard. "What?" Nathan stepped into the light spilling from her window, and she could see his face clearly now. He looked deadly serious, his jaw set with determination. "Marry me, tonight, before dawn. They cannot cast out a married woman, especially not the wife of a property owner. I have standing in this county, even if I do not often come to town. They would not dare." Jessica's legs suddenly felt weak. She gripped the porch railing for support. "You cannot be serious. You do not even know me." "I know you are innocent of their charges," Nathan said, his voice rough with conviction. I know because I have watched you, Miss Barrett. Not in any improper way, he added quickly, but I have observed you these past 2 years. I have seen how you care for your boarders, how you brought food to the widow Morris when she was ill, how you always have a kind word for everyone. I have seen your character, and it is beyond reproach. But marriage, Jessica whispered, that is not something to be entered into lightly. You would tie yourself to me, to my ruined reputation, just to save me from banishment. Nathan took another step closer, and Jessica caught the scent of leather and sage and something indefinably masculine. I will be honest with you, Miss Barrett. I have been alone on that ranch for 6 years. I have built something good there, but it is a lonely life. I am 30 years old, and I would like a wife, a partner, someone to share the work and the days with. I have thought about asking to court you properly, but I am not good with words or social niceties. This situation, as terrible as it is, gives me the courage to speak plainly. He met her eyes directly, and Jessica saw no pity there, only a kind of fierce honesty that made her breath catch. I am offering you a way out, yes, but I am also offering you a real marriage, if you are willing. A partnership. I would never force myself on you, never demand anything you were not ready to give, but I would be honored if you would consider becoming my wife. Jessica's mind reeled. This was insane. She barely knew this man, but as she stood there in the cool night air, with dawn approaching and nowhere else to turn, she realized that Nathan Thorne was offering her more than just escape. He was offering her dignity, a future, and most unexpectedly, respect. Why? She asked, needing to understand. Why would you do this for me? Nathan's expression softened slightly. Because I cannot stand by and watch an innocent woman be destroyed by lies and gossip. Because I believe you deserve better. And because, if I am being completely honest, I have admired you from afar for quite some time, Miss Barrett. Your strength, your kindness, your spirit. I would be proud to call you my wife. Jessica felt tears finally spill down her cheeks, but these were different from the bitter tears she had held back in the council chamber. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of something she was almost afraid to name. I do not know what to say. Say yes, Nathan urged gently. We can wake Judge Morrison now. He lives above the general store. We can be married within the hour, and when dawn comes, you will be Mrs. Thorne, and the council's decree will be meaningless. It was reckless and impulsive and completely mad. It was also the only option that did not end with her alone and destitute on a road leading nowhere. But more than that, as Jessica looked into Nathan Thorne's steady gray-green eyes, she felt a flutter of something that might have been hope or might have been the beginning of something much deeper. Yes, she said, her voice growing stronger. Yes, I will marry you. The transformation that came over Nathan's face was startling. He smiled, a real smile that lit up his usually serious features and made him suddenly, devastatingly handsome. Then we should hurry. We have a few hours yet, but I would not like to cut it too close. Everything that happened next had a dreamlike quality. Nathan took her hand, his palm warm and calloused against hers, and led her through the dark streets to the general store. He knocked firmly on the door until a light appeared in the upstairs window, and Judge Morrison's irritated face peered out. Who in blazes is banging on my door at this hour? The judge called down. Nathan Thorne, Your Honor, I need you to perform a marriage ceremony. Now. The judge's bushy white eyebrows shot up. Now? It is past midnight. Yes, sir, it is urgent. Judge Morrison studied them for a long moment, and Jessica held her breath. The judge was a fair man, but he was also a member of the community that had just condemned her. Would he refuse? But then the judge's expression shifted to something that might have been understanding. Give me 5 minutes to make myself presentable. Wait there. True to his word, Judge Morrison appeared at his door 5 minutes later, fully dressed and carrying a Bible and his official documents. We will need witnesses, he said, his voice all business now. I will fetch them, Nathan said. He squeezed Jessica's hand briefly and then strode off into the darkness, moving with the easy confidence of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Jessica stood with the judge in awkward silence. Finally, Morrison cleared his throat. Miss Barrett, I want you to know that I voted against the council's decision tonight. I was outvoted, but I do not believe the accusations against you have been proven. Jessica looked at him in surprise. Thank you, Your Honor. That means more than you know. Nathan Thorne is a good man, the judge continued, his tone gentle. Solid, honest, hard-working. He does not make decisions lightly. If he has chosen you, he has done so with full knowledge and intent. You could do far worse. Before Jessica could respond, Nathan returned with two people in tow, Samuel Chen, who ran the Chinese laundry, and Rosa Martinez, who worked as a seamstress. Both looked sleepy and confused, but willing. I apologize for the late hour, Nathan said to them, but I need witnesses for a marriage ceremony, and you are both people I trust. Samuel and Rosa exchanged glances, then looked at Jessica with obvious sympathy. Whatever they had heard about the council's decision, they clearly did not share the town's condemnation. We are honored to witness, Rosa said firmly, and Samuel nodded his agreement. Judge Morrison opened his Bible and cleared his throat. They stood in the pool of lamplight from the judge's doorway, surrounded by the sleeping town, and began the ceremony that would change everything. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here tonight to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony, Morrison intoned, his voice carrying the weight of authority and tradition. Jessica's hands trembled, and Nathan reached over and took them in his own, steadying her. His touch was gentle but firm, and she clung to that solid warmth as the judge continued speaking. The words washed over her in a blur, the reality of what she was doing hitting her in waves. She was getting married, to a man she barely knew, in the middle of the night, to escape banishment. But when she looked up at Nathan's face and saw the quiet determination there, the steadiness and strength, some of her panic eased. Whatever lay ahead, she would not be facing it alone. Nathan Thorne, Judge Morrison said, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do, Nathan said, his voice clear and unwavering, his eyes never leaving Jessica's face. Jessica Barrett, the judge continued, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Jessica's voice came out as a whisper at first, then stronger. I do. Do you have a ring? Morrison asked Nathan. Nathan hesitated for only a moment, then reached up and removed a silver ring from a chain around his neck. It was my mother's, he said quietly to Jessica. She would have wanted you to have it. The ring was simple, a thin band of silver with a small turquoise stone set in it. Nathan slid it onto Jessica's finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. The metal was warm from being against his skin, and Jessica felt tears prick her eyes again at the gesture, at the trust and hope it represented. By the power vested in me by the state of California, Judge Morrison pronounced, I now declare you husband and wife. Nathan, you may kiss your bride. Nathan leaned in slowly, giving Jessica plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. But she did not want to. She tilted her face up to his, and his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and chaste, and yet somehow made her entire body flush with warmth. It lasted only a moment, but when they pulled apart, Jessica felt fundamentally changed, as if the kiss had sealed something between them that went beyond the legal words spoken over them. Judge Morrison had them sign the marriage certificate, along with Samuel and Rosa as witnesses. The document was official and binding, proof that Jessica Barrett was now Jessica Thorne, a married woman with rights and protections that single women did not possess. Congratulations, Rosa said, embracing Jessica warmly. I wish you both much happiness. Samuel shook Nathan's hand and nodded respectfully to Jessica. May your marriage be blessed with many years. As the witnesses departed, Judge Morrison handed Nathan the marriage certificate. I will file this with the county first thing in the morning, he said, and I will make certain the town council is aware of this new development. Nathan nodded his thanks, then turned to Jessica. We should go to your boarding house and gather your things. I want to be away from town before dawn, before anyone can make trouble. Jessica's practical nature reasserted itself. I have boarders, Mrs. Henley and Mr. Patterson. I cannot simply abandon them. We will make arrangements, Nathan assured her, but right now we need to move quickly. They walked back through the silent streets, still hand in hand, and Jessica found herself acutely aware of Nathan's presence beside her. He was tall, she noticed, a good 6 inches taller than her own 5 feet and 4 inches. He moved with an easy grace despite his size, and there was something comforting about his solid presence. At the boarding house, they found Mrs. Henley waiting up, her face anxious. The older woman took one look at Jessica's hand and Nathan's, and the ring on her finger, and her expression transformed to one of relief. "Oh, thank the Lord," Mrs. Henley breathed. "I heard what the council did, and I have been beside myself with worry." "Mrs. Henley, this is my husband, Nathan Thorne," Jessica said, the words still feeling strange on her tongue. "We were married an hour ago." Mrs. Henley's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "Well, that is wonderful news. Congratulations to you both. I am taking Jessica to my ranch," Nathan explained. "It is not safe for her here, not with the way the town has turned against her. But I will make sure you and Mr. Patterson are taken care of. I will pay for your room and board at the hotel for the next 3 months, and I will help you find other arrangements if needed." Mrs. Henley waved a hand. "Do not worry about me, Mr. Thorne. I have family in Sacramento. I have been meaning to move there anyway. You just take care of our Jessica." The older woman embraced Jessica tightly, and Jessica clung to her for a moment, drawing strength from the familiar comfort. Mrs. Henley had been kind to her since her parents died, and saying goodbye was harder than she had expected. Nathan helped Jessica pack her belongings. She did not have much: clothes, a few books, her mother's quilt, some photographs, and mementos. It all fit into 2 carpet bags and a small trunk. Nathan loaded everything onto a wagon he had waiting outside, and Jessica realized he must have brought it into town specifically for this purpose. He had planned for everything. As they worked, the sky began to lighten almost imperceptibly in the east. Dawn was coming. Jessica took one last look around the boarding house, at the home she had made for herself, and felt a pang of grief for this chapter of her life that was ending so abruptly. But there was no time for lengthy goodbyes. Nathan helped her up onto the wagon seat, then climbed up beside her. He took up the reins, and with a soft command to the horses, they began moving through the still dark streets of Jamestown. They passed the church, the general store, the saloon where Jessica's supposed sins had begun. She looked at it all with a mixture of sadness and anger, wondering if she would ever come back to this town, if she would ever clear her name. They reached the edge of town just as the sun broke over the eastern hills, flooding the landscape with golden light. Behind them, Jamestown began to wake. Ahead of them lay open country, rolling hills dotted with oak trees, and somewhere beyond, Nathan's ranch. Nathan glanced at Jessica as they drove, his expression unreadable in the morning light. "Are you all right?" Jessica considered the question. Was she all right? She had been condemned by her community, forced into a hasty marriage with a near stranger, and was now heading into an unknown future. But she was not alone. She had a husband who had risked his own reputation to save her, a legal marriage that gave her status and protection, and a chance at a new life. "I think so," she said honestly. "I am frightened, but I am also grateful. You saved me, Nathan. I will not forget that." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You do not owe me gratitude, Jessica. I did what was right, and I meant what I said last night. I want a real marriage, a true partnership. I will not expect anything from you until you are ready, but I hope that in time we can build something good together." The use of her first name sent a little thrill through Jessica. It felt intimate, personal, a reminder that they were married now, bound together in the eyes of the law and God. "I hope so too," she said softly. They drove in companionable silence for a while, the wagon wheels creaking rhythmically, the horses' hooves clopping against the hard-packed dirt road. The countryside was beautiful in the morning light, green from recent rains, with wildflowers blooming in patches of blue and yellow and red. California was a land of stark contrasts, harsh and beautiful at once, and Jessica felt a kinship with it, with its wild, untamed spirit. After about 2 hours, Nathan guided the wagon off the main road, onto a smaller track that wound through a valley between 2 hills. They followed this for another half hour, and then crested a rise, and Jessica saw Nathan's ranch spread out before them. It was larger than she had expected, and more established. There was a sturdy house built of wood and stone, with a wide porch and glass windows that glinted in the sunlight. Behind it stood a large barn, several outbuildings, and a network of corrals and fences. She could see cattle grazing in the distance, and the whole property had an air of permanence and care that spoke to Nathan's character. "This is your home," Nathan said, and there was pride in his voice, but also a touch of nervousness. "Our home now, I suppose. It is not fancy, but it is solid and comfortable. It is beautiful, Jessica said honestly. You built all of this yourself? Mostly. I had help with the barn and some of the bigger projects. But yes, this is 6 years of work. I bought the land with money I saved from working cattle drives in the gold fields. It nearly killed me those first few years, but it was worth it. He drove the wagon up to the house and set the brake. Before Jessica could climb down, Nathan had come around and was offering his hand to help her. She took it, acutely aware of the strength in his grip, the way his hand dwarfed hers, and stepped down onto what was now her new home's front yard. The ranch was quiet, peaceful in a way that Jamestown had never been. Jessica could hear birds singing, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the oak trees. It felt like a different world, far removed from the gossip and judgment of town. Nathan carried her bags inside, and Jessica followed, stepping into her new home for the first time. The interior was simpler than the exterior had suggested, but it was clean and well-maintained. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. There was a rough-hewn table with 4 chairs, some simple but sturdy furniture, and shelves lined with books and supplies. Everything was neat and organized, the home of a man who lived alone but took pride in his surroundings. There are 2 bedrooms, Nathan said, pointing to doors on either side of the main room. The larger one has been mine, but you should take it. I will move my things to the smaller room. You will have privacy, your own space. Like I said, I will not pressure you for anything you are not ready to give. Jessica turned to face him, suddenly overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the past few hours. Nathan, you do not have to give up your room. This is your home. I do not want to displace you. Nathan set down her bags and moved closer to her, not touching, but near enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green-gray eyes. Jessica, you are my wife now. That means this is your home too. I want you to be comfortable here. I want you to feel safe. Please take the room. It will make me happy to know you have a space that is truly yours. The sincerity in his voice undid something tight in Jessica's chest. She had been holding herself together through sheer force of will, but now, in the safety of this quiet house with this unexpectedly kind man, she felt her composure begin to crumble. A sob escaped her throat before she could stop it, and then the tears came in earnest, all the fear and humiliation and grief of the past weeks pouring out in a torrent. Nathan made a soft sound of distress and, after a moment's hesitation, pulled her gently into his arms. Jessica buried her face in his chest and wept, her hands clutching at his shirt, while he held her and murmured soothing nonsense words, one hand stroking her hair with surprising tenderness. "It is all right," he said quietly. "You are safe now. You are home. Let it out, Jessica. You have been so strong, but you do not have to be strong right now. I have you." And she believed him. In that moment, in the circle of Nathan Thorne's arms, Jessica believed that everything might actually be all right. She cried until she had no more tears left, until her sobs subsided into hiccups and then into shaky breathing. Nathan continued to hold her, patient and steady, not pulling away until she was ready. When she finally stepped back, her face hot with embarrassment, Nathan handed her a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "I am sorry," Jessica said, her voice rough. "I did not mean to fall apart like that." "Do not apologize," Nathan said firmly. "You have been through something terrible. You are allowed to feel it." Jessica wiped her eyes and tried to pull herself together. The emotional storm had left her feeling drained, but also strangely lighter, as if she had released some of the poison that had been building up inside her. "I should make us some breakfast," she said, falling back on practical matters. "You must be hungry." Nathan smiled slightly. "I am always hungry, but let me show you where everything is first. And Jessica, you do not have to play the housewife right away. Take some time to settle in, to rest. There is no rush." But Jessica wanted to do something normal, something that would make her feel useful and grounded. So Nathan showed her the kitchen area, the well-stocked pantry, the stove, and the spring house where he kept perishables cool. Jessica set about making coffee and frying up eggs and bacon, while Nathan brought in wood for the fire and tended to the horses. They ate breakfast together at the rough wooden table, and Jessica found herself studying Nathan in the morning light. He had a good face, she decided, strong-featured and honest. There were lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun, and his hands bore the scars and calluses of hard work. He ate with the efficiency of a man used to fueling his body for labor, but he had good manners and a quiet dignity that appealed to her. "Tell me about the ranch," Jessica said, wanting to know more about this place that was now her home. "What do you raise here?" Nathan's face lit up with enthusiasm, and Jessica realized this was a subject he could talk about freely. "Cattle mostly, beef cattle that I sell to markets in Sacramento and San Francisco. I have about 200 head right now, which is a good size for this property. I also keep some horses, both for working the ranch and for selling, and I have chickens, a milk cow, a vegetable garden in the summer. The goal is to be as self-sufficient as possible." "It sounds like a lot of work for one man," Jessica observed. "It is," Nathan admitted. "I have been managing, but barely. I hire extra hands during branding and roundup seasons, but day to day, it has just been me. Having help, having a partner, will make a real difference." Jessica heard what he was not quite saying, that he needed her, not just as a wife, but as a working partner in running this ranch. It was daunting, but also exciting. She had always been capable and hard-working, and the idea of building something alongside Nathan, of proving her worth through action rather than defending herself against false accusations, appealed to her greatly. "I do not know much about ranching," she said honestly, "but I am a fast learner, and I am not afraid of hard work." Nathan reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a gesture that was becoming familiar. "I know that, Jessica. I have seen how hard you worked at the boarding house. You are going to do just fine here, better than fine." They spent the rest of that first day in a kind of careful dance around each other, both acutely aware of the strangeness of their situation, but trying to establish some kind of normalcy. Nathan showed Jessica around the ranch, introducing her to the animals, explaining his routines and systems. Jessica listened carefully, asking questions and taking mental notes. She met the chickens and gathered eggs, learned how to work the butter churn, and helped Nathan prepare dinner. As evening approached, the awkwardness between them grew. They were married, but they were also strangers. Nathan had promised her privacy and time, but the fact remained that they were sharing a home, bound together by vows they had spoken only hours ago. Nathan cleared his throat as they washed the dinner dishes together. "I moved my things to the smaller bedroom while you were gathering eggs. Your bags are in the larger room. Take whatever time you need to settle in. I usually turn in fairly early since I am up before dawn, but do not feel like you have to keep to my schedule." Jessica nodded, grateful for his consideration, but also feeling a strange sense of disappointment. What had she expected? That he would sweep her into his arms and carry her to bed? They barely knew each other, and yet there was something undeniably appealing about Nathan Thorne, something that made her pulse quicken when he looked at her with those steady gray-green eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for all of this." Nathan's expression softened. "You do not need to keep thanking me, Jessica. We are in this together now." That night, Jessica lay alone in the large bedroom that was now hers, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night. The bed was comfortable, far better than the narrow cot she had slept on at the boarding house, and the room was cozy and well-appointed. But she felt strange and unmoored. Her whole life changed in the space of a single day. She thought about Nathan sleeping in the next room, so close and yet separated by a wall and by the terms of their hasty agreement. He had been nothing but kind and respectful to her, had saved her from ruin, and had asked nothing in return. She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that this marriage could become something real, but trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered, and Jessica had been burned too recently to give it freely. Still, as she finally drifted off to sleep, she found herself feeling something she had not felt in weeks: hope. The next few days fell into a pattern. Nathan rose before dawn and went out to tend the animals and check the property. Jessica woke soon after and prepared breakfast, learning to cook on the wood stove and getting used to the rhythms of ranch life. They ate together, worked together, and talked in the careful, polite way of two people getting to know each other. Jessica proved to be a quick learner. Nathan taught her how to milk the cow, how to recognize sick animals, how to mend fences and manage the vegetable garden. She threw herself into the work with determination, wanting to prove her value, wanting to earn her place here. Nathan watched her with quiet approval, never criticizing when she made mistakes, always patient with his explanations. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Nathan told her about his life before the ranch, about growing up in Missouri and coming west with his parents during the gold rush. His father had died in a mining accident when Nathan was 16, and his mother had passed from pneumonia 2 years later, leaving Nathan alone at 18 with nothing but determination and a strong back. "I worked every job there was," Nathan said, staring into the fire. "Panned for gold, drove cattle, worked as a ranch hand, even tried my hand at blacksmithing for a while. I saved every penny I could, lived rough, and waited for my chance. When this land came available, I bought it sight unseen and never looked back." Jessica shared her own story about growing up in Jamestown, about her parents' general store and their deaths from fever, about trying to keep the boarding house running while dealing with the grief and loneliness. "I thought I had found my place," she said quietly. "I thought I was building something stable. And then Martha Cunningham decided she did not like the way men looked at me, and suddenly I was a fallen woman, accused of things I never did." Nathan's jaw tightened. Martha Cunningham is a bitter woman who enjoys causing pain. Her words say everything about her and nothing about you. "But people believed her," Jessica said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "That is what hurts the most. People I had known my whole life, people I had helped and cared for, they believed the worst of me, without question." Nathan reached over and took her hand, a gesture that was becoming natural between them. "Their loss," he said firmly. "You are worth 10 of them, Jessica, and out here, you do not have to answer to anyone but yourself. Out here, you can be free." His words resonated with something deep inside her. Freedom. Yes, that was what she felt here on this ranch, despite the hard work and the strange circumstances. She was free from judgment, free from gossip, free to be herself without constantly watching her every word and action for fear of giving offense. As the days turned into a week, Jessica found herself growing increasingly comfortable in her new life. The work was hard, harder than anything she had done before, but it was also satisfying. She could see the results of her labor in the gathered eggs, the tended garden, the clean house, the mended clothes, and she could see Nathan's appreciation, not just in his words but in the way he looked at her, with growing respect and something that might have been admiration. She was also becoming increasingly aware of Nathan in other ways, the way his shirt pulled tight across his shoulders when he lifted heavy things, the way he moved with the unconscious grace of a man completely at ease in his body, the rare but devastating smile that transformed his usually serious face, the gentleness of his hands despite their calluses and scars. At night, lying alone in her bed, Jessica found herself thinking about the kiss they had shared during their wedding ceremony. It had been brief and chaste, but she wondered what it would be like to kiss Nathan properly, to be held in his arms not in comfort, but in passion. The thought made her blush in the darkness, but she could not deny the growing attraction she felt. 2 weeks after their hasty marriage, a rider came to the ranch. Jessica was in the garden when she heard the horse approaching, and she stood up, shading her eyes against the sun. Nathan emerged from the barn, his hand resting casually on the gun he wore at his hip, a reminder that even in peaceful times, the West could be dangerous. But the rider turned out to be Judge Morrison, his face grave as he dismounted. Nathan relaxed and went forward to greet him, shaking the older man's hand. Jessica hurried over, wiping her dirt-stained hands on her apron. "Judge Morrison," Nathan said, "this is unexpected. Is something wrong?" The judge looked between them, his expression sympathetic. "I thought you should know what has been happening in town. After you left, the council was furious when they discovered Jessica had married. They tried to claim the marriage was invalid, but I showed them the certificate and reminded them that I have full legal authority to perform marriages at any time." Jessica felt her stomach clench with anxiety. "What did they do?" "Mayor Thornton wanted to send the sheriff after you, claiming you had defied the council's order. But I pointed out that the order was to banish Jessica Barrett, and Jessica Barrett no longer exists. Jessica Thorne is a married woman with full legal rights. They had no grounds to pursue you." Nathan's arm came around Jessica's waist, a protective gesture that made her feel both safe and warm. "And now? Now they are forced to accept the situation," Judge Morrison said. "Though I will tell you, the gossip has been vicious. Martha Cunningham and her circle are claiming all sorts of things about how you coerced Jessica into marriage, Nathan. But there are also people speaking up in your defense, Jessica. Mrs. Henley has been very vocal about the injustice done to you, and Samuel Chen and Rosa Martinez have been telling anyone who will listen about witnessing your marriage and how it was clearly done with mutual consent. Jessica felt tears prick her eyes at the thought of people standing up for her. "Please thank them for me." Judge Morrison nodded. "I will, but I wanted to warn you both. There may be trouble yet. Some people in town are not willing to let this go. You should be careful, especially if you come to town for supplies." After the judge left, Nathan and Jessica stood together in the yard, processing what they had learned. Jessica felt Nathan's arms still around her waist and leaned into him slightly, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I have brought trouble to your door." Nathan turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Jessica, look at me." She raised her eyes to his. "You have brought nothing but good into my life. Trouble from small-minded people who cannot accept that they were wrong? That is not your fault. We will face it together, just like we face everything else." The intensity in his gaze made Jessica's breath catch. They were standing very close, close enough that she could see the green and gold flecks in his eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something electric and unspoken. "Nathan," she whispered, not even sure what she was asking for. But Nathan seemed to understand. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing gently across her cheekbone. "Jessica, these past 2 weeks with you have been the best of my life. I know this started as a marriage of convenience, a way to save you from an unjust sentence. But for me, it has become something more. You are smart and strong and kind, and every day I find myself falling a little more in love with you." Jessica's heart hammered in her chest. "You love me? I think I started loving you long before we married," Nathan admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "All those times I came to town and made excuses to walk past your boarding house, hoping for a glimpse of you. I told myself I was being foolish, that a woman like you would never look twice at a rough ranch hand like me. But then fate gave me a chance to make you mine, and I took it. I do not regret it for a second." Jessica reached up and covered his hand with hers, pressing it more firmly against her cheek. "I was attracted to you from the first time I saw you," she confessed. "You were different from the other men in town, quieter but stronger. I used to watch for you too, hope that you would stop by the boarding house. I thought you were just being polite when you would nod to me on the street, never imagining you felt anything more." Nathan's eyes darkened with emotion. "I felt everything more. I still do." This time, when he leaned in to kiss her, it was nothing like the chaste brush of lips at their wedding. This kiss was deep and searching, full of all the longing and desire they had both been holding back. Jessica's arms wound around Nathan's neck, and she pressed herself against him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the rapid beating of his heart that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Jessica, I meant what I said about not pressuring you, but I need you to know that I want you, all of you. I want a real marriage in every way, but only if that is what you want too." Jessica felt a surge of courage and certainty. "I want that too," she said clearly. "I want you, Nathan. I want this to be a real marriage. I am ready." The smile that broke across Nathan's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He swept her up into his arms, making her laugh with surprised delight, and carried her toward the house. "I was hoping you would say that," he said, his voice warm with happiness and desire. That night, their marriage became real in every sense of the word. Nathan was gentle and patient, taking his time to learn what pleased her, making sure she felt cherished and desired. Jessica had been nervous, but with Nathan, everything felt natural and right. This was what marriage was supposed to be, she thought, as she lay in Nathan's arms afterward, both of them tangled together in the bed they would now share. Not duty or obligation, but partnership and passion, and the growing certainty of love. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, saying the words for the first time. Nathan's arms tightened around her. "I love you too, Jessica. More than I ever thought possible." Life on the ranch took on a new dimension after that night. They were not just partners in work now, but true husband and wife, building something together that went beyond convenience or circumstance. Jessica threw herself into learning everything she could about ranching, and Nathan taught her with patience and pride. She learned to ride, to rope, to help with the cattle. She proved to have a natural talent with the horses, and Nathan started letting her help break and train the young ones. Spring turned into summer, and the ranch flourished under their combined efforts. They worked from dawn to dusk, but the work was satisfying. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the hills, Nathan's arm around Jessica's shoulders, both of them tired but content. But the peace could not last forever. In late July, Nathan and Jessica had to go into Jamestown for supplies. They had been avoiding it, ordering what they could through catalogs and making do with what they had. But there were some things they simply needed that could only be gotten in town. Jessica was nervous as they drove the wagon down the familiar main street. She sat very straight beside Nathan, her chin up, determined not to show weakness even though her stomach was churning. Nathan seemed to sense her anxiety because he reached over and took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. They stopped at the general store, and Jessica took a deep breath before climbing down from the wagon. The store was busy, and conversation stopped dead when they walked in. Jessica felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, judging, condemning, curious. But then something unexpected happened. Rosa Martinez was there, buying fabric, and she broke into a wide smile when she saw Jessica. "Mrs. Thorne, how wonderful to see you. You look so well." Rosa's warm greeting broke the ice, and soon several other people came forward to offer their greetings. People who Jessica realized had never believed the accusations against her. Mrs. Henley was there too, and she embraced Jessica warmly. "You look happy," the older woman said. "Marriage agrees with you." Not everyone was friendly. Martha Cunningham and her circle pointedly turned their backs, whispering loudly enough for Jessica to hear about shameless women and the men they trapped. But Jessica held her head high, Nathan's solid presence beside her giving her courage. She was not the same frightened woman who had faced the council 3 months ago. She was Mrs. Nathan Thorne, and she had found her strength. They gathered their supplies and were loading the wagon when Mayor Thornton approached. Nathan immediately stepped in front of Jessica, his body language protective and slightly threatening. "Mayor," he said coldly. Thornton looked uncomfortable, his jowls quivering. "Mr. Thorne, Mrs. Thorne, I wanted to speak with you both." "I cannot imagine we have anything to say to each other," Nathan said, his voice flat and hard. "Please," Thornton said, and to Jessica's surprise, he looked genuinely distressed. "I owe you an apology, Mrs. Thorne. Both of you. I have learned some things recently that have made me realize we made a terrible mistake." Jessica felt Nathan tense beside her. "What things?" she asked warily. Thornton glanced around, clearly not wanting to have this conversation in public. "Could we speak somewhere more private? Perhaps in my office?" Jessica looked at Nathan, who nodded slowly. They followed the mayor to the town hall, and once they were in his office with the door closed, Thornton sank into his chair, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "2 weeks ago," he began, "Martha Cunningham's daughter, Louisa, came to me in private. She was in tears, and she confessed that her mother had forced her to lie about seeing you at the saloon, Mrs. Thorne. Louisa said she had never seen you do anything improper, but her mother had threatened to send her away to live with relatives if she did not back up Martha's story." Jessica felt a rush of vindication mixed with anger. "And you believed her? After you ruined my life based on those same lies?" "I did not want to believe it at first," Thornton admitted. "But then others came forward. It turns out Martha Cunningham has been spreading malicious rumors about several women in town, always women she perceived as threats or rivals. I am not the only one who has been fooled by her. But that does not excuse what the council did to you." He pulled out a document from his desk drawer and slid it across to them. "I have prepared an official letter of apology on behalf of the town council. We are rescinding the banishment order and clearing your name of all accusations, Mrs. Thorne. Furthermore, if you wish to pursue legal action against Mrs. Cunningham for slander and defamation, the council will support you." Jessica picked up the letter and read it, her hands shaking slightly. It was everything she had wanted 3 months ago: vindication, an admission of wrongdoing, her reputation restored. But now, looking at it, she felt a strange disconnect. That life, that person she had been, felt like it belonged to someone else. "What has been done about Martha Cunningham?" Nathan asked, his voice still cold. "She and her husband have left town," Thornton said. "There was too much anger directed at them once the truth came out. They moved to San Francisco, I believe." Jessica set down the letter and looked at the mayor directly. "I appreciate the apology, Mayor Thornton. I do. But words on paper cannot undo the harm that was done. I was cast out of my community, my reputation destroyed, my life upended. If it were not for my husband, I would have been left destitute and alone. Thornton had the grace to look ashamed. I know, and I am sorry, truly sorry. If there is anything I can do to make amends. Jessica glanced at Nathan, who gave her an encouraging nod. She turned back to the mayor. There is one thing. I want a public announcement made, clearing my name and explaining what really happened. I want everyone in Jamestown to know that I was innocent, that I was wronged by this council, and I want a formal apology published in the newspaper. Consider it done, Thornton said immediately. As they left the mayor's office, Jessica felt lighter than she had in months. The vindication was sweet, but what mattered more was that she no longer needed it. She had built a new life, a better life, and nothing that happened in Jamestown could touch that. Nathan helped her into the wagon and climbed up beside her. Before he picked up the reins, he turned to her with a serious expression. How do you feel? Jessica considered the question. Relieved, she said finally, but also grateful. If none of this had happened, we would never have married. I would never have found you or this life we are building. So in a strange way, I am thankful for it all. Nathan leaned over and kissed her, long and slow and sweet, right there in the middle of town where anyone could see. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining with emotion. I am thankful too, every single day. The ride back to the ranch was peaceful, both of them quiet with their own thoughts. Jessica watched the landscape roll by, the golden hills and oak trees, and felt a profound sense of belonging. This was her home now, not Jamestown. Her home was wherever Nathan was. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jessica realized she had missed her monthly courses. She had been so busy with ranch work that she had not paid much attention, but now, counting back, she realized she was nearly 2 weeks late. A flutter of excitement and nervousness went through her. Could she be pregnant? She decided not to say anything to Nathan yet, not until she was certain. But over the next week, other signs began to appear. She felt tired more easily, and certain smells made her queasy. By the end of the week, she was fairly certain, and one morning she woke up and was violently sick. Nathan was immediately concerned, hovering over her with worry. I am sending for the doctor, he said firmly. No need, Jessica said, once the worst had passed. She looked up at him, unable to keep the smile from her face. I am not sick, Nathan. I am pregnant. The expression on Nathan's face was one she would remember for the rest of her life. Shock, then joy, then wonder, all flashing across his features in quick succession. Pregnant? You are certain? As certain as I can be without a doctor's confirmation. But yes, I believe so. Nathan let out a whoop of joy and swept her up into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop before she got sick again. He set her down carefully, as if she were made of glass, and cupped her face in his hands. We are going to have a baby. Jessica, we are going to be a family. Tears streamed down Jessica's cheeks, but they were happy tears. Yes, we are. Nathan insisted on sending for the doctor anyway, and a week later, Doc Henderson came out to the ranch and confirmed what Jessica already knew. She was about 6 weeks along, healthy and strong, and if all went well, they would have a baby in late February or early March. Nathan became almost comically protective after that. He insisted Jessica rest more, tried to take over all the heavy work, and fretted constantly about her health. Jessica found it both endearing and exasperating, and she had to remind him firmly that she was pregnant, not ill, and that she was perfectly capable of doing her share of the work. But what if something happens? Nathan worried. What if you overdo it? Women have been having babies while doing hard work since the beginning of time, Jessica said gently. I will be careful, I promise. But I cannot just sit around for 7 months, Nathan. I will go mad. They compromised. Jessica continued to do most of her usual tasks, but Nathan took over the heaviest work and made sure she rested in the afternoons. He was constantly bringing her little treats, wild berries he found while checking the fence lines, a particularly pretty stone he thought she would like, a book he had ordered from San Francisco that he thought she might enjoy reading. Jessica felt cherished and loved in a way she had never imagined possible. This man who had married her to save her from banishment had become the center of her world, and she loved him more with each passing day. Autumn came, painting the hills in shades of gold and russet. Jessica's belly began to swell with their growing child, and she found herself running her hands over it constantly, marveling at the life inside her. Nathan would sit with her in the evenings, his large hand resting on her belly, feeling for the baby's movements, and the look of wonder on his face never failed to move her. In November, they made another trip to Jamestown. The public announcement of Jessica's innocence had been made, and the newspaper had published a full retraction and apology. When they drove into town this time, people greeted them warmly. Several women came up to congratulate Jessica on her pregnancy and offer advice. It was strange and wonderful to be welcomed instead of shunned, but Jessica also realized she did not need the town's approval anymore. She had Nathan, she had the ranch, she had their coming child. That was enough. Winter was mild that year, with only a few cold snaps and one snowstorm that blanketed the ranch in white for 3 beautiful days. Jessica's belly grew round and firm, and Nathan would lie with his head resting against it, talking to their unborn child, telling stories about the ranch and making promises about all the things they would do together. "I hope it is a boy," Nathan said one night as they lay in bed. "A son to help with the ranch, to carry on what we are building." "I hope it is a girl," Jessica countered with a smile. "A daughter to teach and love, to show her she can be anything she wants to be." Nathan chuckled and kissed her swollen belly. "Boy or girl, this child will be loved beyond measure." Jessica's labor began on a cold morning in late February. Nathan immediately went into a panic, rushing around trying to gather supplies, while Jessica calmly told him to ride to town and fetch the doctor and the midwife. He did not want to leave her, but Jessica insisted. And finally he galloped off, riding faster than was probably safe. Rosa Martinez arrived first. Having been in the area visiting a friend, she took charge immediately, getting Jessica settled, preparing the bedroom, and talking her through the contractions with calm efficiency. "You are doing beautifully," Rosa encouraged. "Nice and steady. First babies take their time." The doctor and the midwife arrived a few hours later, brought by a wild-eyed Nathan who looked like he had aged 10 years. He tried to come into the bedroom, but the midwife shooed him out. "This is women's work, Mr. Thorne. You wait outside." "But she is my wife," Nathan protested. "And she will still be your wife when this is done," the midwife said firmly. "Now out." Jessica labored through the day and into the evening. It was hard work, harder than anything she had ever done, and there were moments when she was certain she could not go on. But then she would hear Nathan's voice through the door, calling encouragement, telling her how strong she was, how much he loved her, and she would find the strength to continue. Finally, as the sun was setting, with one last tremendous push, their child entered the world with a lusty cry. "A boy!" the midwife announced, holding up the squirming, red-faced infant. "You have a son, Mrs. Thorne." Jessica wept with exhaustion and relief and overwhelming love as they placed her son on her chest. He was perfect, tiny and wrinkled, and absolutely perfect. She counted his fingers and toes, marveled at his dark hair and the way his little fist closed around her finger. The door burst open, and Nathan rushed in, his face wild with worry and hope. "Jessica, are you all right?" "Come meet your son," Jessica said, smiling through her tears. Nathan approached the bed slowly, as if walking in a dream. He looked down at the baby in Jessica's arms, and his expression transformed into something so tender and awed that Jessica fell in love with him all over again. "He is so small," Nathan whispered. "So perfect." "Would you like to hold him?" Jessica asked. Nathan nodded mutely and carefully took the baby from her, cradling him against his chest with surprising gentleness for such a big man. The baby stopped fussing immediately, seeming to recognize his father's heartbeat. Nathan looked down at his son, and tears began to stream down his weathered cheeks. "Hello, little one. I am your papa, and I promise you I will spend every day of my life making sure you know how wanted and loved you are." They named him William Nathan Thorne, after Nathan's father. William was a healthy baby, with a good appetite and strong lungs. Nathan was an attentive father, getting up for night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just holding his son and staring at him in wonder. Jessica recovered quickly from the birth, her body resilient and strong from the hard work of ranch life. Within a few weeks, she was back to her usual routines, though now with a baby strapped to her chest in a sling that Rosa had helped her make. William seemed content to be carried around as Jessica went about her work, and he would often fall asleep to the rhythm of her movements. Spring came early that year, bringing wildflowers and new calves. Jessica would walk through the fields with William, showing him everything, talking to him about the ranch, about his father, about the life they would build together. Nathan would often join them, the three of them sitting on a hillside watching the cattle graze, perfectly content in each other's company. One evening, when William was about 4 months old and sleeping soundly in his cradle, Nathan and Jessica sat on the porch watching the sunset. Nathan had his arm around her shoulders, and she was leaning against him, feeling utterly at peace. "Do you ever think about that night?" Nathan asked quietly. "The night the council banished you?" Jessica considered the question. "Sometimes, but when I do, I mostly feel grateful. If it had not happened, we would not be here now. You would not have had the courage to propose, and I would not have had the reason to accept. Everything we have now, our marriage, our son, this life, it all came from that terrible night." Nathan pressed a kiss to her temple. "I would not change a thing. Every hardship, every struggle, it all led me to you." "And me to you," Jessica agreed. She turned her head to look at him, at the face she had come to love so deeply. "I never imagined I could be this happy, Nathan. I thought my life was over that night, but it was really just beginning." "Our life together is just beginning," Nathan corrected softly. "We have years ahead of us, decades if we are lucky. Years to raise our son, to build our ranch, to grow old together." "More children," Jessica added, a smile playing at her lips. "I think William needs a little brother or sister, do not you?" Nathan's eyes darkened with interest. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying I love you, Nathan Thorne, and I want to fill this house with children and laughter and love. I want to build a legacy together, something that will last long after we are gone." Nathan kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Jessica, more than words can say. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Inside the house, their son slept peacefully, unaware of the love that surrounded him. Around them, the ranch they had built together stood solid and enduring, a testament to hard work and partnership and faith. 2 years later, William had a baby sister named Sarah, a fierce little thing, with Jessica's dark hair and Nathan's gray-green eyes. 3 years after that, another son arrived, James, who was quieter than his siblings, but just as loved. The ranch prospered under Nathan and Jessica's combined efforts, growing from 200 head of cattle to nearly 400. They hired permanent ranch hands and built additional housing for them. The house was expanded, adding more bedrooms and a proper parlor. Jessica became known in the area as a woman of character and substance, someone who could rope a steer and deliver a breech calf and still make a pie that won prizes at the county fair. Nathan was respected as a fair employer and a shrewd businessman, his reputation for honesty and hard work spreading throughout the region. They did return to Jamestown regularly, though they never moved back. Jessica maintained friendly relationships with the people who had stood by her, and she held no grudges against those who had not. The past was the past, and she had too much to be grateful for in her present to waste time on bitterness. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Jessica with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with Rosa, who had become like a grandmother to them, and spent a week in the city, staying in a fine hotel and seeing the sights. It was exotic and exciting, but both of them were happy to return to the ranch at the end of the week, to their children and their animals and the wide open spaces they had come to love. "I do not need fancy hotels or city lights," Jessica told Nathan as they rode up to their house, their children running out to greet them. "All I need is right here." Nathan helped her down from the wagon and pulled her close, kissing her soundly while the children giggled and made faces. "All I need is you," he said. "You are my adventure, Jessica Thorne. You are my everything." As the years passed, Jessica and Nathan grew older together, their love deepening with time rather than fading. They watched their children grow into fine adults. William took over more and more of the ranch operations, proving to be a natural leader and a skilled cattleman. Sarah developed a talent for breaking horses and started a breeding program that became renowned throughout California. James, who had always been quieter, discovered a gift for numbers and began handling the ranch's business affairs. Jessica and Nathan became grandparents, then great-grandparents. The ranch that Nathan had started alone and that Jessica had helped him build became a family legacy, passed down through generations, each one adding their own mark. On a warm spring evening in 1902, Jessica and Nathan sat on the porch of the house they had shared for 30 years. They were both in their 70s now, their hair gray, their faces lined with age. But when Nathan took Jessica's hand, the touch was as warm and familiar as it had always been. "Do you remember the night we married?" Nathan asked, his voice still strong despite his years. "How terrified you looked standing outside your boarding house." Jessica laughed, the sound still bright despite the decades. "I remember thinking I must be insane to marry a stranger in the middle of the night. But I also remember looking into your eyes and feeling something I had never felt before. Hope, safety, the beginning of love." "The beginning," Nathan agreed. "And look at what we built from that beginning. 3 children, 8 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren so far. A ranch that employs 30 people. A legacy that will outlast us both." "A love that will outlast us both," Jessica corrected softly. She squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that remained despite his age. "Whatever comes next, wherever we go together, just like we always have." Nathan raised her hand to his lips and kissed it, a courtly gesture he had never lost. "Together," he agreed, "always together." Around them, the ranch bustled with life. Grandchildren played in the yard, their laughter ringing out clear and joyful. Cattle lowed in the distance. The setting sun painted the hills in shades of gold, the same hills Jessica had first seen from Nathan's wagon 30 years ago, when her life had been in ruins and her future uncertain. But Nathan had been right that night. He had offered her not just escape, but partnership. Not just marriage, but love. Not just survival, but a life full of meaning and purpose and joy beyond measure. The town council had voted to cast her out at dawn. The cowboy had married her before the sun came up. And in doing so, he had given her everything she had ever dreamed of, and more than she had ever hoped for. As the sun slipped below the horizon and the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Jessica and Nathan sat together in comfortable silence, their hands entwined, their hearts still beating as one. They had built something beautiful together, something that would endure long after they were gone. But more than the ranch, more than the legacy, what they had built was a love story that had started with a desperate midnight proposal and had grown into something eternal. Years later, after both Jessica and Nathan had passed peacefully in their sleep within months of each other, their children found a leather-bound journal that Jessica had kept throughout her life. In it, she had recorded the story of that fateful night, the hasty marriage, the years that followed. On the last page, written in her shaky elderly handwriting, were these words: "I was condemned and cast out, left with nothing and no one. But the cowboy who married me before dawn gave me everything. He gave me love, respect, partnership, and a family beyond my wildest dreams. If I could go back to that terrified girl standing in the council chambers, I would tell her not to be afraid. I would tell her that the worst night of her life was actually the beginning of the best life she could have imagined. I would tell her that sometimes salvation comes in the most unexpected forms, and that true love is not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It is about 2 people choosing each other, day after day, year after year, and building something beautiful together from nothing but faith and hard work and the courage to hope for better days. Nathan Thorne saved me that night, but the truth is, we saved each other, and that has made all the difference." The journal became a treasured family heirloom, passed down through generations of Thornes, and the story of Jessica and Nathan, the woman cast out, and the cowboy who claimed her as his own, became the foundation myth of a family built on love, resilience, and the unshakable belief that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are simply the prelude to our greatest blessings. The ranch still stands today, a sprawling operation run by the 5th generation of Thornes. On a hill overlooking the property are 2 headstones, side by side, marking the graves of Nathan and Jessica Thorne. Visitors often leave wildflowers there, honoring the memory of 2 people who turned scandal into triumph, exile into homecoming, and a desperate midnight marriage into a love story for the ages. The house has been preserved as well, maintained by the family as a reminder of where they came from. In the parlor hangs a portrait of Nathan and Jessica, painted when they were in their 40s. Nathan stands tall and proud, his hand on Jessica's shoulder. Jessica sits before him, her expression serene and confident, wearing a simple silver ring with a turquoise stone. They both have slight smiles on their faces, and in their eyes is a warmth and contentment that speaks of a life well lived and a love well earned. Below the portrait is a bronze plaque with an inscription chosen by their grandchildren, Jessica and Nathan Thorne. She was cast out at dawn. He married her before sunrise. Together they built an empire of love that spans generations. May their story inspire all who come after to choose courage over fear, love over judgment, and hope over despair. And so, the story ends where it began, with a choice made in darkness that led to a lifetime of light, with two people who had every reason to give up, but instead chose to hold on to each other and build something beautiful from the ashes of injustice. With a love that started as salvation and grew into the stuff of legend. The town council had voted to cast her out at dawn. The cowboy had married her before the sun came up. And in those crucial hours between midnight and sunrise, two lives converged and became one, creating a legacy that would endure for generations, and a love story that would never be forgotten. Their great-great-grandchildren still work the ranch today, still tell the story of how it all began, still honor the memory of the woman who was condemned unjustly, and the man who had the courage to stand with her when no one else would. They have faced their own challenges over the years, as every generation does, but they have faced them with the same determination, the same partnership, the same unwavering commitment to family and land and each other that Nathan and Jessica modeled so beautifully. On quiet evenings when the work is done and the family gathers on that same porch where Nathan and Jessica spent so many hours together, they can almost feel the presence of their ancestors. The love that was forged in those desperate early days still permeates the very wood and stone of the ranch, a tangible reminder that the best things in life often come from the hardest moments, and that true love is not diminished by time, but only grows stronger, deeper, more profound with each passing year. Jessica Barrett became Jessica Thorne in a ceremony performed by lamplight with only a handful of witnesses. But that simple midnight marriage transformed two lives and created a dynasty. She went from being a woman with no future to being the matriarch of a family that would span centuries. He went from being a lonely rancher to being a husband, father, and the founder of a legacy built on integrity and love. Their story is one of redemption and second chances, of finding light in the darkest moments, of the transformative power of choosing to trust and to love even when it seems impossible. It is a reminder that our worst days do not define us, but how we respond to them does. That true strength is found not in never falling, but in rising again and again, especially when we have someone to rise alongside. As the sun sets over the ranch each evening, painting the sky in the same brilliant colors that Nathan and Jessica watched together for so many years, their descendants pause in their work and remember. They remember the courage it took to marry a stranger in the darkness before dawn. They remember the faith it took to believe that love could grow from such desperate circumstances. They remember the determination it took to build a life together from nothing, to face judgment and gossip and hardship, and come out stronger on the other side. And they are grateful, immeasurably grateful, for that fateful night in March of 1872, when the town council voted to cast her out at dawn, and the cowboy married her before the sun came up, setting in motion a love story that would echo through time and inspire generations yet to come. It was a beginning born of desperation, but it became a love that would last not just a lifetime, but would ripple forward through time, touching lives that Nathan and Jessica could never have imagined, proving that one act of courage, one choice to love, can change not just two lives, but the course of an entire family's history forever.